The great hall of Ironvale Keep was full of light and laughter that night, but King Caelan Ashvorn felt none of it. He sat at the head of a long table covered with silver dishes and burning candles, surrounded by the most powerful wolves in the Northern Territories. Lords and ladies raised their glasses. Someone made a toast. Everyone clapped. Caelan lifted his goblet and drank, and smiled the way a king is supposed to smile, and felt absolutely nothing inside. It was the 5th anniversary of his marriage to Princess Elowen of the House of Orrel. The marriage had brought peace between the wolf clans and the royal human bloodlines, a peace that had lasted, that had held, that had kept thousands of wolves from going to war. It was a good marriage. It was an important marriage. It was, by every measure that mattered to a kingdom, a successful marriage. Caelan knew all of this. He had told himself all of this, on many quiet nights, for 5 years. Elowen sat at the other end of the table. She was beautiful, in the way that still water is beautiful, calm and clear and deep. She caught his eye across the dishes and the candles, and she did not smile in the way a wife smiles at a husband she loves. She smiled in the way that said, "I know, I have always known, and it is all right." That small, honest look between them was the most real thing in the room. The celebration had been going on for an hour when the doors of the hall opened and a guard walked in quickly, far too quickly, his boots loud against the stone floor. He leaned down and whispered something into the ear of the head steward. The steward turned pale. Then he walked to the king and bent low. "A rider has arrived, Your Majesty. He is badly hurt. He carried only this." He placed a sealed letter on the table beside Caelan's plate. The seal was red wax, pressed with the shape of a wolf's open paw. Caelan did not recognize the seal. He opened the letter under the table, away from the eyes of his guests. 3 words were written inside. "She is alive." Caelan did not move for a long moment. Then he folded the letter, placed it inside his coat, and raised his glass once more. He smiled. He toasted the peace. He congratulated himself on 5 years of good decisions. That night, alone in his study, he stood by the fire and stared at the letter until the paper curled and turned black and became nothing. Then he stood there staring at the ashes. He told himself it was not real. He told himself it was a trick, a trap, a lie sent by rebel wolves who wanted to shake his mind. He told himself this for a long time. He did not sleep. 200 miles away, in the deep woods of Ashwood Ridge, a different kind of meeting was happening. Saraphene Vale stood in front of 50 wolves gathered around a wide fire. She was lean and quiet, and her eyes were the color of dark amber. There were scars on her forearms that she had stopped hiding a long time ago. She wore no crown and carried no title, but every wolf in that clearing watched her, the way wolves watch someone they would follow anywhere. "We do not go in with teeth," she said. "We go in with truth." She laid a stack of papers on the flat stone beside the fire. Ledgers, contracts, letters written in the handwriting of noble wolves who sat on the king's own council. Letters that proved those nobles had stolen land from rogue packs, forced wolves into labor camps, and paid soldiers to look the other way. 5 years of evidence. 5 years of careful, patient work. "These men think they are untouchable," she said. "They think no one is coming. They are wrong." A young wolf named Devon, who had ridden with Saraphene for 3 of those 5 years, watched her from across the fire. He had seen her exhausted and cold, and close to broken in those early years. He had never once seen her give up. He knew why she was really going back. He had never said it out loud, because she had never said it out loud, and he respected her enough to let her carry it in silence. But he knew. She was going back for justice. And she was going back for him. A week later, one of the king's supply convoys traveling through the eastern road found the road blocked by a fallen tree. When the guards climbed down to move it, they found a wooden box sitting in the middle of the path. Inside the box was a stack of documents, neatly tied with string, and a single folded note on top. The note said, "You were lied to. So was I. I am not your enemy. Find out who is." It was signed with no name, but the handwriting on that note reached inside Caelan's chest and grabbed something he had spent 5 years trying to bury. He knew that handwriting. He would have known it in the dark. That same evening, Elowen came to his study without being asked. She sat across from him with a calm face and a folder in her hands, and she placed it on the desk between them. "I have been looking into the raid," she said. "The one 5 years ago, the one at the border." Kaelin looked at her carefully. "That raid was investigated." "It was covered," Elowen said, without any heat in her voice. "There is a difference. Look at page 3. He looked. The dates did not match. The guard reports had been changed. The men listed as witnesses had never been stationed at that border. Someone had rebuilt the story of that night from the inside, carefully, so that it would hold together when no one was looking too hard. Kaelin sat very still. "3 members of your council arranged it," Elowen said. "I believe she was taken on purpose. I believe she was meant to disappear." She paused. "I thought you should know who is sitting at your table." Kaelin looked at his wife. This woman he had married while he was still grieving. This woman who had lived 5 years beside a man who could not fully be present, and who had spent those same years quietly searching for the truth he had not been able to find himself. He did not know what to say. There were no words that covered it. Elowen simply stood, nodded, and left him alone with the file. He rode to the border 3 days later, alone. His guards thought he was inspecting the eastern line. He told no one where he was really going. She was already there when he arrived. She stepped out of the tree line with 2 wolves at her sides, and she stopped 10 feet away from him, and the world went very quiet. 5 years. She looked different, and the same at once. The way a river looks the same from a bridge, even when the water has entirely changed. She was steadier than he remembered, harder in some ways, more certain of herself. The bond between them, that deep, invisible thread that true mates carry in their bones, pulled at both of them. Neither of them moved toward it. "I did not come back for you," she said. Her voice was even. "I came back for them." She meant the exiled wolves. She meant the ones the noble council had thrown out, and silenced, and forgotten. "I know," Kaelin said. "Good." There was a silence. Then he said, "Tell me the names." She handed him a folded paper. He opened it. He read 3 names written there. He recognized all 3. He had sat across from all 3 at dinner. He had asked one of them for advice on trade agreements just 2 weeks ago. He looked up at her. She was watching him steadily. "I believe you," he said. She nodded once, turned, and walked back into the trees. The noble wolves moved fast. Word had reached them that the king had met with the rebel general at the border. They did not know what had been said. They did not need to know. The meeting alone was enough to panic them, and frightened powerful men do dangerous things. By the time Kaelin was riding back to the keep, the 3 nobles had sent messengers to every loyal packlord they controlled, announcing that the king had been taken, held against his will by rebel wolves, and calling for a military rescue. It was a lie dressed as loyalty. It was a trap dressed as service, and it moved faster than the truth. Kaelin received the warning from a young scout, who rode hard to reach him on the road. The keep's outer gates were already being controlled by soldiers loyal to the 3 nobles. His personal guard had been told to stand down for safety reasons. The palace was being locked from the inside. He stood in the middle of the road and understood clearly what was happening. Then he turned his horse around and rode back toward Ashwood Ridge. He found the camp just before dark. When he walked through the trees alone, every wolf in the camp turned and stared. Devon stepped forward with his hand on the blade at his side. "You have a great deal of courage," Devon said quietly, "coming here." "I need an alliance," Kaelin said. He looked past Devon to where Saraphene stood, watching him from near the fire. "3 men are trying to take my kingdom tonight. They are the same 3 men who arranged her disappearance. I cannot fight them alone." The camp was very quiet. Several wolves exchanged looks. Saraphene walked forward slowly. She stopped in front of him. She looked at him the way someone looks at a difficult problem they have already solved in their mind. "If I help you," she said, "the exiled wolves are formally recognized. All of them. Written law. Your seal on the document tonight." "Yes," he said immediately. "And you answer for the 5 years, not to me, to your kingdom." "Yes," he said again. She looked at him one moment longer, then she turned to her wolves. "Prepare to march." Inside the keep, Elowen was sitting in her private room under the watch of 2 soldiers who had been placed there by the noble council to keep her safe. She was not afraid of them. She had spent the last 2 hours writing, and when she was finished, she folded the letter small, called her most trusted servant to the window, and sent it quietly over the wall. The message reached Saraphene's wolves before midnight. Elowen wrote that she would open the east gate at the first light of dawn. She wrote that the household staff and the lower-ranked guards, most of them common wolves with no loyalty to the noble council, had been told the truth. She wrote one last line for Saraphene directly. "I know what you came back for. I want the same things. Do not let him die." Saraphene read the letter by firelight. She read it twice. Then she said nothing for a moment, folded it, and placed it in her coat. "She is brave," Devon said quietly beside her. "She is more than that," Saraphene said. The east gate opened at dawn exactly as promised. Saraphene led her wolves through the gap quietly and quickly. There was no shouting, there was no chaos. The soldiers at the inner doors, young wolves from ordinary families who had watched the noble council's greed for years, stepped aside one by one as Saraphene passed them. Word had moved through the servant corridors all night, like water moves through stone, slowly, and then all at once. The three noble wolves were found in the war room, writing emergency orders and arguing with each other. When the doors opened and Saraphene walked in, followed by her wolves and then by King Kalen himself, the room went completely silent. One of the nobles said, "This is treason." "No," Kalen said, "this is a correction." The trial was held in the Great Hall the same morning. It was not a secret meeting or a quiet decision made behind closed doors. Kalen opened the hall to every wolf in the keep, servants, guards, nobles, visiting pack members, all of them. Saraphene stood at the front and presented the evidence herself, clearly and without drama, piece by piece, the contracts, the letters, the falsified reports, the record of what had been done to her and to dozens of other wolves over the years. The hall was silent throughout, the kind of silence that comes not from emptiness, but from people paying very close attention. When Saraphene finished, Kalen gave his judgment. The three noble wolves were stripped of their lands and their titles. The exiled packs were declared formally recognized under royal law. The document was signed and sealed in front of everyone. It was not a small moment. For many of the wolves in that room, it was the first time they had ever watched someone powerful tell the truth in public and face what came with it. That evening, Kalen spoke with Elowen privately. They sat across from each other in the quiet of his study, and for once, there was no performance between them, no careful distance, no polite management of something that had never been what it should have been. He told her the truth. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat quietly for a moment, and then she said, "I know. I have always known. I think I knew before you did." She told him that she wanted to dissolve the marriage, not with anger, not with pain, with honesty, and with her own sense of what was right. She proposed that the alliance between her family's house and the wolf territories continue through a formal treaty, not a marriage. She said that peace did not have to be held together by two people pretending. Kalen agreed. He told her that she was one of the bravest people he had ever known. He meant it. She smiled at that, a real smile, not the careful one from across the dinner table. "Take care of yourself," she said, "and take care of her. She earned it." Saraphene was standing at the edge of the Ashwood Ridge the next morning, looking out over the territory as the sun came up. She heard footsteps behind her, and did not turn around, because she already knew who it was. Kalen stopped beside her, not in front of her, not behind her, beside her. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she said. "Your wolves and mine." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the light move across the hills. The mate bond hummed between them, patient and old and steady, the way it had always been, the way it had survived 5 years of grief and distance and silence. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything," Kalen said. "I know 5 years is a long time. I know you are not the same person who left, and I am not the same person who let you go." He paused. "But I would like the chance to know who you are now, if you will let me." Saraphene was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I loved you before I knew how to love myself. I am not going back to that. But I am not the same as I was." She turned and looked at him for the first time that morning. "Ask me again in 6 months." He looked at her. "Is that a yes?" The corner of her mouth moved. "It is a maybe." from someone who has learned that maybes matter. Below them, across the ridge, the wolves of the rebel camp and the wolves of the royal keep had begun to move among each other in the early morning light. Someone had started a fire, someone else had brought food. Two young wolves from different packs were talking to each other carefully, the way people talk when they are learning that the stranger in front of them is not so strange after all. Saraphene watched them for a long moment. Then she turned back to the open hills and breathed in the cool morning air, and she felt, for the first time in 5 years, that she was standing exactly where she was supposed to be, not because a king was beside her, because she had walked through fire to get here, because her wolves were free, because the truth had been spoken in a great hall full of witnesses, and it could not be unspoken. She had come back for justice. She had found something better.